button, Sarah.
We're recording now.
Well done, Sarah.
Yeah. Right, item 1 then, apologies for absence.
7, 9.
We've got apologies from Councillors Bradwick and Jones. If I can just run through who I think I've got here. Councillors Brown, Spencer, Drake, Evans, Hussey, Jarvie, Roberts, Shaw, Smith and Thomas. Is there anyone else who's on that I've missed?
Right. Can I ask everybody who's not speaking, please switch your mics off so we can hear? Thanks very much. Anyone else that needs to be put on apology? Nobody? That's great.
No.
Right. We move on to item 2 then, declarations of interest. If anybody reminding the personal responsibility to both verbally and in writing declare any personal or prejudicial interest. So have anybody got any particular interest that you want to declare before we start?
Chair, don't we do the standard one that on declarations of interest that I've forgotten what the wording is. We normally sign a sheet at the start of the meeting, don't we?
Yeah, that was my next point. I was going to ask Sally, did she want to, go
yes,
on there?
We always record a general declaration of interest for any matter that impacts upon people's home authority.
Sally, Dan's just joined.
Yes, I've picked him up. Thank you.
Right. So nobody got anything, and all of the authority ones are declared. So
I think Dan wants to say something, Jay.
Oh, sorry, Jack. Yeah, go on. I can't see it up on my screen. It keeps going.
I do apologise for being late. I had some internet issues at home, but basically, I just didn't know I needed to clear it. But obviously, as I'm on the HR and Equalities Committee, referring to obviously proposed with terms of reference of the Scrutiny Working Group, wouldn't that be obviously something just to note down? Because obviously it would change, obviously, for myself obviously being on the committee, and also any obviously other member who is obviously on that committee or on the finance committee.
Yeah, I think that's obviously going to be a general interest that would affect all members, because obviously members haven't decided that they're happy to go along with those proposals in the terms of reference yet, because that has to be a decision of the fire authority. And as you say, that would affect every fire authority member on which committees they sat on. So that would be an appointments issue, but we can note that down for you, Councillor Norton.
Okay, thanks for that, Dan. Right. I'll move on to item 3 then, which is the chairperson's announcement. I've got nothing at the moment. Then we move on to item 4, to receive the minutes. The Finance, Asset and Performance Management Working Group held on the 12th of October 2020. So page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8, and finally page 9. Would somebody like to propose, or have anybody got any issues?
I propose that, Chair. I propose that, Chair.
I'll second, Chairman.
Okay, thanks. Anybody? Does anybody want to bring anything?
Chair, can I just raise on item 7 on those minutes, the medium-term financial strategy? It was the intention to bring consultation responses back to this meeting in terms of the budget consultation. To date, we've only had one communication, which was from Bridgend, and that was only seeking further information. So I haven't bothered to kind of bring a report back, because there was really nothing to report at this point in time. If anybody does formally respond to the consultation, then we will obviously bring those to the Fire Authority meeting when the budget is considered.
Okay, thanks for that, Chris. Right, if nobody got anything else you want to bring up, then we'll move on to item 5 then. Oh, sorry, my pages are stuck together.
Page 11, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, it's page 11. It's operational and personal equipment strategy budget and planning assumptions 2020 to 2025, page 11. Thanks for that, Sal. I couldn't flip the pages.
Hoping that there is someone in room 8 to present that, but I can't see. I think Gareth's there, possibly.
There is, Sal.
Great.
Thank you, Sal. Thank you, Chair. Yes, myself, Gareth Davis, Head of Operational Risk Management. I also have with me Hugh Morse, who's one of my senior managers who manages the sort of personal equipment strategy and the personal clothing strategy. So if I can refer you to the report that I submitted, starting on page 11, obviously gives you a little bit of a background. As the department that manages the operational assets, we've had in place and developed for a large number of years now the asset development plan and replacement strategy. So as you can see on page 13, 2020 and 2021 is going to be a busy year for both our department and the service in terms of replacement of some real fundamental items of clothing and equipment for the service. As we can see on 6.2 breathing apparatus sets, 6.21, I'm pleased to say that has now been delivered. This was an all-Wales project as far as the replacement of breathing apparatus sets are concerned. And quite, I think, a fundamental improvement in terms of firefighter safety, because we believe the new set, in terms of the technology that it provides for us, reduces the risk to the firefighters within the compartments because of the amount of information that set now gives us as far as the individual wearer is concerned. So I'm pleased to say that we delivered that aspect of the project back in February last year. That was quite a challenging period for us. It was actually delivered when we had major spate conditions in terms of flooding across the service. And it's, as you can imagine, breathing apparatus are a fundamental piece of equipment as far as how we operate is concerned in fire behaviour compartments. So that replacement had to be done in a period of eight hours. And I'm pleased to say we actually delivered within those timeframes, removed the old sets and replaced the new sets during that time period. During that time, we've been obviously using the sets, and I'm pleased to say that we haven't found any particular problem as far as the set is concerned. They've been received really well. I think that was down to probably comprehensive training that we carried out prior to the issue of the sets. And apart from the odd little aspect that's cropped up as far as the sets, no major problems. So now we have all of the 3 bus services operating on the same sets. If I move you on to 622, this is probably the next biggest project that we'll be delivering this year, and that is the replacement of the new structural kit, which at the moment we have received delivery of around about 80% of that kit, and an expectation has been raised with us from our providers that all of that kit will be in our possession by the end of the month. So for the next 2 or 3 months, probably starting in February, we'll be starting to deliver that kit. And I would imagine in 2 or 3 months, then there'll be a complete replacement of the structural fire kit. Certainly in South Wales, this was an all-Wales project, so that's been delivered again across North Wales and Mid and West. But I anticipate probably we'll be the first Welsh service to move over to the new structural kit. That is aligned as well with the replacement of the new helmets. So in conjunction with Mid and West, we've collaboratively entered a tender with them. That tender has now been approved. I think Hugh will provide a little bit more detail on that. And again, we're hoping to align the delivery of the fire kit and the helmets roughly the same time. Radios and batteries, they have been replaced. We took the advantage of replacing those along with the new breathing apparatus sets. Again, the radios that we've procured, again, I think an improvement as far as firefighter safety is concerned. They're a digital stroke analog radio, which gives us more flexibility in obviously very challenging environments. The current project that is underway at the moment, if we move you to 625, are the replacement of our thermal imaging cameras. Our thermal imaging cameras have been with us several years, and this is probably a piece of technology that, with obviously investments by our providers, really improves quite dramatically from one generation to another. So that test of thermal imaging camera is being carried out in the next few weeks, combining alongside Mid and West as well, to basically look at what's out there as far as the new generation of thermal imaging cameras. And the information we've had so far is whomever we go to as far as the new thermal imaging cameras, again, it'll be a major improvement based on our current thermal imaging camera. Hugh, if you want to elaborate on that?
No, the trials are starting today. So.
Again, this year, we're scoping out the replacement of our hydraulic cutting equipment and spreading equipment. I say, well, hydraulic, but there's been quite huge, probably, steps forward as far as e-packs are concerned with the hydraulic equipment. So we're looking and being quite open, really, as far as the type of equipment that's on the market at the moment. We could be actually dipping our toe in the water as far as the new equipment is concerned. That will be battery powered as opposed to hydraulic powered. Again, we'll carry out quite comprehensive and robust engagement with the companies and the testing of this type of equipment. It has been out there for a number of years as far as the battery equipment is concerned for our road traffic collision equipment. We haven't dipped our toe in the water yet, but we've certainly seen improvements over the last number of years as far as the capability of this type of equipment and the power as far as the battery and the weight as far as the batteries are concerned. So this is something, again, that we're scoping out this year. And the one thing I would like to add as well is the delivery of this equipment, and certainly as far as the function of the department is concerned, as you can see in what's been delivered over last year and this year, has brought us some challenges in terms of the environment with COVID. But I'm pleased to say that even with the challenges of COVID, we still intend to deliver as far as this plan is concerned over the, or certainly over this year and the coming years. I'm happy to go through the spreadsheet as well, Chair. I'll leave Hugh to that if you wanted to just have a look at the asset replacement that has been drafted through the plan on the Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah, if there's any issues you want to highlight or anything like that, I think members have read it, or they should have read it.
I think Councillor Spencer wants to come in, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Spencer.
And Councillor Brown after.
And Brown after, yeah. You're on mute, Councillor Spencer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah? Right,
yeah.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to ask a quick question. It's more likely a simple answer, that we don't wait for these committee meetings to order equipment. If equipment come available, that we get our orders in, because I'd like to think that we'd lose life if we had to wait for authorization of equipment. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. If you'd like me to answer that, as the
I agree wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Yeah, and this has been raised in previous meetings, and yeah, rest assured, there's things we need to replace, essential items, and those purchases do go ahead. We respect these meetings, and it's important that you know where the money is being spent. But there are things that we have to replace, and rest assured we do replace them as necessary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Councillor Brown, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask a question about Appendix 2 with all the tables in, because it's a bit difficult to follow it through, because the green bits are the revenue expenditure and the blue are the capital expenditure. And I can see that following through for 2018-19, but, you know, because you can see the figure there for the revenue, basically, say, for example, it says 9,695, and then there's a 7,000 rough figure, and then later on there's one about 2,000. It's a bit difficult to work out the figures because obviously the tables haven't got the same year headings, but I was looking at the capital expenditure in 2020-21, which it says is about 2.4 million, but I couldn't see the corresponding boxes as I went through to make up that sum. There's one that's 252,000 on page 1, but as I say, I can't see how it all adds up. I mean, it's very difficult because page 2 and 3 haven't got the years on the top, so it's difficult to see which year you're referring to. But I'm not quite sure whether it adds up to, 2.4 million approximately.
Yeah, it's not a great sheet to look at. It's not a great sheet to look at for my team. So we are working on a more user-friendly version to look at. And I appreciate you can't see the dates on the other side. And that is a large...
Could you go through that just to show me the difference?
Yeah, certainly, yeah. The expenditure there is... The big ones... Yeah, the big expenditures there are the thermal imaging cameras, which Garth talked about. There's 252,000 there.
Yeah.
And then if you turn the page, at the very bottom, the big expenditure is the structural fire kit for everybody, which is 1.8 million. And the helmets, which is 320,000. So that gets you to your 2.3 million then.
So that column, what number column is that?
It's the sixth column, Councillor
Brown.
The
column for 2021.
Oh, I see, yeah. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I see, yeah. I think the problem is it's very difficult to go from page to page, isn't it, when you're looking at it?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's worth. I suppose it's when it's printed, it's a whole table. But
yeah, it's a lot of information at once, isn't it?
In some sense, as if we could put the headings on the new page, that would probably make it easier.
Yeah, we'll try and make sure we do that for future reports, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, right. It's just to make sure that it all adds up, that's all.
The questions, if there's no other questions, I'd like to ask a couple.
Yeah.
First thing is...
I think Councillor Smith, was that?
Yes, only very briefly.
Oh, come on, Val, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Dave. Relating to the helmets, do they incorporate, and then you've got the other system, the thermal whatever cameras, do the helmets incorporate a camera in any way, sort of a personal protection one or whatever?
No, there is the technology out there. It's in its early stages where you can attach an individual camera to a helmet. And I know they've been on the news probably a year or two ago, but no, they're not. The technology is not there yet. So we have a separate helmet and then a separate thermal imaging camera.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank
you.
We looked at that, Councillor Smith. There's all manner of different technology out there. I think there was one that they were looking at, that the thermal imaging camera could be part of the BA mask as well, but. Yeah. I'm sure on evaluation we wouldn't find that as the best use of the thermal imaging camera in that sort of setup.
Yeah.
We much prefer, through our training, we much prefer sort of a thermal imaging camera that is used physically in the hand, because what the thermal imaging camera within a mask will do, it'll obscure the user's vision as well. So although that could be a positive as far as being hands-free, it produces probably a bigger weakness, because it would obscure some vision as far as the wearer is concerned. And for us, that just increases firefighter risk. So our move to the new thermal imaging camera will certainly be an improvement, but I wouldn't go away from the camera being used in a physical capacity in the hand.
No, thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. The question I got is, what inspections and service intervals we got for this equipment before we decide to renew them? And if we're using equipment, say we got a batch of equipment and we don't use as much, how do we then reassess that overall to see whether we keep it that bit longer?
Okay, Chair. I suppose the big one for yourselves is the structural fire kit, which is a big expenditure. When you buy new fire kit, it's not so much the amount of years you use it for, it's based on the amount of washers it has. So most fire kits are based around about 40 washers, which on average from busy stations, quieter stations, gives you a 10-year lifespan on that kit. So with fire kit, it loses the materials it's impregnated with, and the protection it gives wears off through the washers. But in regards to monitoring that, the laundry contract that we enter, that is part of their job. They review that kit every time it goes in for a wash, and we get notified if it's condemned, if it needs repair or whatever. So it's we have quite an accurate idea of how our kit is performing. To use another example, the thermal imaging cameras are quite dated, quite bulky, not as clear as they should be, and they have naturally come to the end of their life. We are replacing batteries, which are quite expensive, just due to the age, and it is time for what we call a technical refresh on all them. And the other items of equipment, if you're going to, there's a massive amount, there's 88,000 items of equipment. We have a system called Red Kite, which is the testing regime. Some of the testing is done by firefighters on station on a daily basis, maybe a monthly basis. That incorporates the maintenance departments, fleet and engineering. So everything is looked at and ticked off, for want of a better word, that is in working order. But got quite a robust method of monitoring our equipment. Would you like to ask about anything in particular, any particular item?
No, I just wanted to know, I know about the vehicle side because that's my forte, but I didn't know, how often you inspected them, how often they were assessed. You've given all the figures in there, but you've given them a sort of intervals of, inspections or servicing or anything to get to the end,
From with you being from an engineering background, the easiest thing for me is when a piece of kit is given a specific lifespan. The perfect example is gas tight suits. I know they only last 10 years, so I can plan ahead for them. With some of the things Gareth talked about, the hydraulic cutting equipment or battery operated, that's much more difficult because there's not a defined age on that. It's when it starts to not perform as good as it should. But that's, again, where the testing regimes come into their own. So it's a variation of how often we test it and whether something has a specific age span or not.
I suppose, Chair, coming from your engineering background, what you would understand is planned maintenance. So that's what RecLogic is basically. It's a planned maintenance of routine testing, all this amount of equipment that we have out there, and stations on, as you alluded to, stations on a daily basis test all their equipment. So from every station, be it on call or be it tool time, part of their responsibilities is the testing of a lot of pieces of equipment and entering onto the planned maintenance piece of software, which obviously is Red Kite for us, and that captures all of the maintenance as far as the equipment is concerned. So we, in terms of risk, we have an accurate record as far as the equipment, or whether that equipment or a single item of equipment has failed the test and needs to be replaced or repaired.
Yeah, no, thanks for your comprehensive answer. It just explains to members the procedures you've got in place, and I think you answered that very well.
I
Rob,
think
did you want to come in?
Shaw had indicated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quickie, really. Yeah, Red Kite covers about 68,000 items. I think it's incredible inventory in there. But for ease, really, the final column on the spreadsheet is lifespan. So most things have been assessed for a usable lifespan on that spreadsheet.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, some of them are sort of guesstimates, but some are actual lifespans. So. Yeah,
it just helps sort of clarify what expected lifespans would be.
Yeah, no, that's fine. All right. Any other questions from any other members?
Only a small one, Jim.
Go on, pal.
Yeah, I think that end column actually helps, but it must guide in sort of the future thinking. You're planning your strategy, even though it's a guesstimate, if you like, for some things. My question was a simple one, Chairman. As to who our insurance providers are, and whether the insurance the authority has is sort of a whole package that covers everything broken down into segments, or do we go to various different insurance providers? So the insurance provider, whether it's still Zurich, I don't know, or where we go. Thank you.
We have, Councillor Smith, we have different insurers for different aspects of our insurance. Because they all, some insurances are quite specialist, and we obviously put each element of the insurance out to tender when the contracts are done.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it might have been one great big glorious package, and no, thank you.
No, not that easy, I'm afraid.
No.
Well, thanks, members. I think we've had a good discussion with that, and thank the officers for providing the answers. Our recommendation is that members note the contents of this report. Are we happy with that?
Yes, happy to move. Yep.
Okay, seconded.
Second.
Yep, thanks very much. Right. I move on to the next one. The Departmental Risk Register Report Health Check 2021, Quarter 2. Who was that, Sal? Sure, Sally, is it?
Sarah's going to take this one.
Yeah,
so Sarah's going to take this one for you, Chair. So, members, I'm sure that you've had opportunity to review the entirety of the departmental risk report that's been provided to you. Pages 5 to 11 show the detail that was provided for the Quarter 2 updates for each of those departmental risks. And you will notice that 3 of those risks have actually reduced their severity over at Quarter 2, and the remaining 30 have remained extant. Now, one of the things I'm sure members will have noticed when they review page 3 and 4 of the report, which is a list of all the departmental risks, is that there are a number of those risks that are quite similar in nature. So one of the things that we're looking to do with the departmental risks going forward is to review them as categories. So, for example, there were a number of risks on pages 3 and 4 to do with people, to do with staff leaving, morale, sickness levels, succession planning, and loss of experienced staff. So when we reviewed the departmental risk register at the end of Quarter 2, the planning, performance and risk team, who John Carter leads for us, came up with a suggestion that we categorise a number of those risks. So, for example, there are 11 categories that have been identified, and they cover such things as people and resources, finance, property. And each one of those risk categories has been given a head of service sponsor allocated to them to go forward. And for example, the staff risks that I've mentioned previously, in future, we will be managing them as a departmental risk, as a conglomerate risk. So Andrew Jones, who sponsors the people resource category, will hold one conglomerate risk around staff turnover, retirement profiles, and sickness levels, etc. What we will be doing as a head of service team is we'll be reviewing those on a quarterly basis, and each of those category risk owners will review the risks that sit underneath their category and then develop a risk narrative for that category. What that will enable us to do will be enable us as heads of service to have a better holistic view of all the risks that are being experienced in each of the departments. We will be able to share learning better, and we'll also be able to assist one another at heads of service level, perhaps more speedily with a broader perspective. And what can happen then with those departmental risks is, I'm sure members are aware that we've got our strategic risk register. Should a departmental risk be of such significance that it needs to be elevated to a strategic risk, we should be able to identify that very swiftly and be able to put that mechanism into place. So that was just to give members an overview of how we are further developing the way that we are managing departmental risks for the service on behalf of the authority. So I just wanted to share that with members as our future plan. And if there are any questions that members have, I'd be happy to cover them now.
Chair, can I just add on that as well? Particularly because there's probably one departmental risk that looks like it's standing out slightly above some of the others, which is the building compliance one. That one relates not to the fact that we haven't got mechanisms in place to do all the statutory testing, so Legionella gas, those sorts of things. It's more we haven't got one viewing platform to view all those records from. So for the property team, that's their highest risk, that they're looking to try and streamline the viewing platform. I just wanted to reassure members that we're not breaching the fact that we have to have all these statutory tests done to our premises.
Yeah. Councillor Shaw, did you want to ask a question?
I did, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, and thank you, Sarah, for the explanation of how the report's going to evolve. It's really a question of my understanding, if you don't mind. You've got a column for direction of travel, yeah, and there's, well, but throughout the whole report, there's only two symbols used. So I presume the arrow is improving risk, but we've got nothing to compare, so we don't know how it's improved. Or it's text which says it's good, but it maintains its either amber or red status as well. So how do we know the direction of travel? It is actually good. It may be one increment, it may be 20. And are there no risks that are actually getting worse, such as building control, I suppose, or staying the same as they are?
Yes, I'll cover that for you, Councillor Shaw. So the black arrow pointing towards the right means that risk has maintained its score over the last period. So there's been no change in that risk score. The risks where you can see a tick with a green down arrow, that means that risk has actually reduced across the last reporting period. So it's reducing in either severity or likelihood, which means that we're managing that risk down. I can confirm that none of the departmental risks have increased in severity over that period. But what we will do is we'll make sure that we have a legend key in the report. It's a good spot. Apologies for that not being there.
That would be very useful, Jerry.
Yeah, it would be very useful, wouldn't it? So we'll make sure that that's in there in the future. And what we can also have a look at is a way in which we can identify how much that risk has reduced over that reporting period. If I went into the system, I would be able to advise you of that, but we'll try and see if we can implement that into the report structure going forward.
That's very good. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
I think Councillor Brown
Yeah,
and Councillor Norton afterwards.
Yes, thank you. I was looking at the table on page 3 or page 37 of the agenda, and obviously we've talked about I think in terms of scrutiny, probably the red areas of high risk are the areas, in a sense, to concentrate on. You mentioned about sort of grouping them together, but my concern is if you do that, will you miss out on important things like sickness levels and additional pressure and, because restructuring morale, they're basically separate categories. But I can't understand also why, some of these like restructuring and sickness aren't in, I would have thought this was a HR people services function. So I'm a bit confused about why they're in particular service areas, and perhaps you could explain that. But also in terms of sickness and restructuring, I'd be interested to know how that is going and whether we've experienced more sickness levels at the moment, or the restructuring is the job evaluation. And, I was concerned about that to ensure that there was gender equality and there wasn't an increase in the gender gap as a result of job evaluations. And obviously, if that impacts morale, that's an issue as well. But again, I'm confused why that's corporate services rather than HR or human resources, actually, I would have thought. So perhaps you could explain how these things work out. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Brown. In fact, you've hit on it in a nutshell there, in the fact that when, as a heads of service group, we reviewed those risks, one of the things that we identified was actually the effect on morale of job evaluation is across all those areas of the organisation, the corporate areas of the organisation.
Tell him I've emailed Ian.
Sorry, Sally, you weren't on mute then. So yes, you've cracked it in a nutshell there. So part of that experience of sharing those departmental risks and discussing them as a heads of service team, we did identify actually that this is a category, which is why we're looking at that conglomerate risk, which would in future be held by head of HR, which is Andrew Jones. So I think that hits one of your questions there. Actually, two of them, because that identifies why we've decided to categorise those risks as well. Now, for example, just because we have a category risk around perhaps morale or the effect of job evaluation across all the departments that impacts on, we also want to keep the flexibility for particular areas of the organisation to have their own departmental risk within a category. So, for example, I have a number of teams that have very small specialist teams within the corporate services area. So if I ended up having a rush of people who were leaving my department because there were perhaps better terms and conditions outside in another sector, I would still be able to raise my departmental risk underneath that HR category risk to say that this is an issue that we need to look at in this department. So we're trying to create a system that has that flexibility both ways. Does that answer your question, Councillor Brown?
So, yeah, I think what you're saying is that, say, for example, if the head of service of human resources, if it was effectively their risk on a particular category, it wouldn't stop a department then saying this is a risk within our particular area as well.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and could you comment about the job evaluation and the sickness levels at the moment?
Okay, I can comment that job evaluation. I don't believe that job evaluation is impacting on the sickness levels. Sally, I think I'm correct in saying that our sickness levels across the service are reasonably healthy considering COVID and the other projects that we've got going on.
Yeah, certainly ELT get daily updates at the moment and have been throughout the COVID pandemic on sickness across the organisation. Certainly over the Christmas period, as with most other places, we saw a slight increase in our sickness levels, but fortunately our COVID-related absence now seems to be coming down, so we're still under 10% sickness across the organisation as a whole. In relation to the job evaluation, that process is still ongoing, and certainly whilst the initial interviews have all been conducted, no formal decision has yet been taken on the banding widths and the finances that link to those. So obviously the equality impact assessment hasn't yet been able to be undertaken in relation to the outcomes of the job evaluation, and obviously that will have to come before members in any event in due course.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Norton, you wanted to go next? You're on mute, you are.
Yes, I was testing you. We can go off. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, mine's quite a simple question. Obviously, it's positive that some of the risks have gone down, but obviously most of them have stayed steady. So, can we get information on how long they have been at that level, particularly the ones in red and amber, because our number? And are there any solid targets to, let's say, reduce all the red ones, particularly in the buildings compliance, from red to at least amber by the next update? That's all really.
Thank you, Councillor Norton. We would be able to potentially, in future reports, identify how long a risk has stayed at that particular level. So I can have a conversation with John and his team to see how we can add that detail into the report for you. With regards to setting a target, it's not something that we formally do with our risks presently. We always aim to reduce that level of risk, either to mitigate it. But with regards to the detail on the building risk category, I wouldn't have the detail on that.
Do you want me to pick up on the building one, Councillor Norton? Certainly it's one that we've had identified for a period of time within the Property Services Department. As you're probably aware, our Property Services Department is a compact and bijou team of 4. And given the other major developments that we've got or have had going on across the service, Pontypridd, Tonpandy, those types of schemes, which of course have been complicated by COVID, that is one of the items that we're still trying to work on to find a suitable system that we can display all the correct data for each of the statutory tests and checks that we have to do on each of our premise. Because at the moment things come into different sections of different systems. So we need that viewing platform to be able to view all that data for our 50 sites. So that is ongoing, but obviously capacity issues are impacting that at the current time.
Does that answer your question, Dan? Yeah. All right. There we are then. Any other questions? No, because Sally's doing quite well with that, and Sarah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, come on, Val.
Yes, please. I was intrigued, well, surprised with DR H303 on page 42, I think, page 8, Sarah. The department to lose the use of the core HR and payroll system. That surprised me considerably. I didn't realise we had an issue. And then the one underneath, we do keep trying with the pensions. I am trying. But no, particularly the HRO3, please. A little bit of explanation.
Yes. So with regards to HRO3, behind that particular risk would probably be the fact that the supplier for the core system is in Ireland, and there were potential Brexit implications should we have ended up in a no-deal situation. So that's probably one of the main drivers behind that particular departmental risk.
And I think the other area behind it, Councillor Smith, is the fact that obviously we like to have business continuity arrangements in place for all of our key functions. Obviously, payroll is a pretty big key function for us, because I think if we stopped paying people, we wouldn't have many people on stations to deliver the service. So part of the business continuity work that we ensure all the departments and teams undertake is what would happen if they were to lose access to our core HR and payroll system. So that's them ensuring as well that they have sufficient systems in place to be able to either rerun last month's payroll as a worst case scenario or access it via a different route.
Right. So what of Mid and West Wales then, Sally? Have they also...
Right.
Are they going
Mid
there
and West,
independently?
yes, Mid and West Wales and ourselves undertook a joint procurement for core HR. As part of that process, we have been working together on developing the system, but that there are a number of areas now where the difference in how we deliver things is starting to cause issues with how the HR payroll system can be set up. So the difficult decision has been taken that we will, rather than have a joint system, even though each service could only access their own data, that joint system is now being separated so that we run on two separate platforms, which will enable us to develop particularly the modules around recruitment, which is currently being utilised for our whole-time firefighter campaign. That's being done completely through core HR at the moment. It will also help us to develop the learning and development sections, because Mid and West didn't want to proceed with some of those areas. So that separation work has either just been completed or is in the process of being completed this month.
Can I just working from a platform? Are they working from the same platform in parallel?
Historically, they have been, yes. So we're now separating those platforms out to enable us to develop more areas of core HR that they didn't want to develop.
Right. Interesting. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Is everybody happy with that? The two girls have had to work this morning.
What we're paid for.
I think that's very good, because it just proves we are doing what we're asked to be doing with scrutinising it. So if members have got no other questions, I think if we need to note that. Is everybody happy with that?
The recommendation was for noting. So.
Yeah. Right, if we move on to item 7 then. The initial draft annual governance statement 2020-2021, page 47. Who's taking that one?
Me again.
Say it again. Oh, hey, you're earning it this morning.
Okay. So, members, I will make the reasonable assumption that you've had a chance to review the initial draft document. So my plan this morning is just to run through it at quite a high level with yourselves. I'm sure you were all aware of the reasoning and the rationale behind the annual governance statement. Is to show that we have a good governance framework within the authority, ensuring our systems, processes, culture and values. And although the statement, the annual governance statement, will be published in the statement of accounts, it won't. It is a document that isn't solely limited to the financial year of 2021. It will actually carry on until approval of the accounts. And in paragraph 2.3, I provide assurance to you that the format of the annual governance statement has previously been approved by the Wales Audit Office. To further strengthen that this year, I had some very good conversations with members of the Wales Audit Office, and there's a couple of tweaks that we are doing to the annual governance statement this year. One of the things that I've done is I've gone through a benchmarking process with a number of other similar organisations and local authorities as well to benchmark the structure and content of their annual governance statement with the one that we produce. And you will also notice at the end of the draft of the annual governance statement, there is a section where I will be including this year a summary conclusion in the annual governance statement. That's from direct conversations with the Wales Audit Office this year, which it is an addition that I will be putting into the annual governance statement. So from page 49 to page 70 is the initial draft of the annual governance statement, where we cover the scope of responsibility and the purpose of the governance framework. And then on pages 2 onwards, we cover lots of the governance framework of the different elements that we've got in place to provide that assurance. So we talk about the executive leadership team and their role, also the senior management team, the treasurer's responsibilities. We talk about the constitutional documents and provide a live link to the website where people that read the annual governance statement will be able to have very easy access to them. We talk about the medium-term financial strategy as well as the strategic plan and the improvement plan. We talk about the risk management policy that we have in the service, and then the role of the FAPM committee and scrutiny group. Now, as members go through this initial draft, you'll notice the first occurrence on page 52, where I've put in red, bold, capital letters, where there are either elements of assurance that still have to happen, so that I'm acknowledging that those haven't happened at this moment in time, or it may be that we are still awaiting key assurance documents, perhaps from Welsh Audit Office, where we want to include their opinion within the document. So, and then you can see an example of that on page 55, where the head of internal audit opinion will be inserted into the document when that is available for us. Section 4 talks about the review of effectiveness, and then section 5 goes on to talk about the significant governance issues and challenges for 2021. Obviously, COVID plays quite a significant role in this section of the report and the service's response to that. The stepping up of the critical incident team and the acknowledgement that operational response continued to operate as normal. And there were certain risk reduction activities that we temporarily minimised until we could find safe ways to deliver those services, both for our people and for the public. We then talk about the significant investment that the service has made, facilitating remote working and, more importantly, facilitating improved engagement across the service with the installation of video conferencing equipment in all of our locations. We talk about the fact that we work closely with partners, particularly the support to the Welsh Ambulance Trust. And then we talk about some of the internal improvements we've done on the business management system and our risk management plans and core HR have successfully rolled out the online recruitment. And we talk about being a statutory partner on the public service boards and our maintenance of our compliance with the national framework. We then talk about, in section 6, the significant governance issues and challenges for 21-22, and you'll notice that there are a number of those that we've been wrestling with in 2021 that will continue into 21-22, which wouldn't be a surprise to us because things of that significance often take a long time for us to work through, and particularly taking acknowledgement of the volatile situation that we are working in the current climate and the speed at which things are changing currently. So that's section 6. Section 7, you see the governance plans and the progress that we've made against them for the previous financial year. And you'll notice a lot of these sections are in red because those commentaries will be updated as appropriate nearer the time. And then similarly on section, we then talk about the 21-22 governance plan. And you can see the actions in there. Many of those have translated across again, and there are a few new actions in there. And then you will see in summary conclusion, page 70, which is all red text at the moment because I'm still waiting on a number of key documents to enable me to make that objective assessment of our achievement with regard to the annual governance statement. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the document and some of the main things that we've done over the last 12 months. Any questions, members?
Councillor Shaw, did you want a question?
I did. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Sarah. Another comprehensive document. Yeah, I must say, quite a hard read, actually, because there is so much red ink in there. But I understand entirely why. So I've got two questions. First of all, will the report, when complete, be republished for us to scrutinise? And the other question relates to page 56, the fourth paragraph, mentioned that all staff are allocated as key workers. Can you confirm that they've received inoculations to protect them? For COVID, I mean.
Yes. So I'll take the first question first. The report, I am expecting all of the missing documentation through February and March. So there will be a second draft of this, which will go to the full fire authority in March. And then that document will be almost the final version. And when I take that to the fire authority in March, I'll be asking for delegation for minor changes between what happens in March and when we finally publish the AGS. So there'll be a much more comprehensive and less red document going to the fire authority in March. I do apologise about that, member.
No, it's not your fault. Thank you.
That's okay. Yes, and all staff within the Fire and Rescue Service were allocated underneath the COVID legislation as key workers. The staff that we refer to in the document that have been volunteering with WAST have actually been put on the WAST inoculation programme. And I haven't got any new news at the moment about any other key staff being inoculated. I don't know if Sally's got anything later.
No, at the current time, we're just sticking to the Welsh Government inoculation programme, which doesn't include our staff. It will just be as a route to their current plan. I know there was stuff in the media over the weekend about key workers being inoculated, so teachers, police, firefighters, but I think that was English-centric rather than anything new coming out of Welsh Government. Certainly I've had no new Welsh Government updates sent through on a change to their inoculation programme at the current time.
That's why I asked the question, Sally. As you correctly identify, there is no plans at the moment for key workers such as fire service, police, etc., for inoculation. But you are key and frontline workers, so that's an interesting situation.
Certainly, we're continuing to push Welsh Government to get firefighters on the list of personnel who need inoculation ASAP.
There's currently no plans for inoculation for anyone under 55. The tier 9 is people 55 and over, so anyone below that hasn't even been included yet. Although there are statements saying they hope to have us all inoculated by September. But if you take 3 months for the next jab, you're really talking about the end of this year before we'll get any coverage at all.
Yeah. Which is why, as well, we're sticking to the government guidance and keeping absolute bare minimum numbers in places like headquarters, training centre. Obviously, station personnel all have COVID secure work environments and appropriate PPE where those 2-metre working distances can't be maintained at specific incidents.
Yeah, thank you, Sally.
Thanks for that, Rob. Councillor Brown, you wanted a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for the report. I was just looking at page 67 on the agenda, and obviously there's a list of the governance action plan. And I just wanted to ask a question about the biodiversity and carbon reduction, because it does mention about the environment, and there have been a significant number. Sorry, whenever that was my phone going.
I've had it earlier, don't worry.
I've turned my mobile off, but whenever I start talking, her phone seems to go. Anyway, what I was asking is obviously there's more demands at the moment with regard to climate change on flooding, and there doesn't seem to be anything within this report about the extra demands on flooding. I mean, I was quite surprised to learn that sandbags that local authorities provide are discretionary, and I just wondered whether that aspect should be highlighted. The other the other category I was expecting within a governance action plan on the boxes would actually be the constitution, and to make sure that was also going to be updated on a digital basis, because of emails and virtual meetings and so forth, and motions and various other things, because obviously the constitution does have rules within it about scrutiny and so forth.
Picking up on the flooding issue, obviously that's a statutory duty now for us to respond to flooding incidents, and certainly in relation to the location of our premises, we always try and ensure, even though we know we have some stations within flood areas, we ensure that any new stations are located outside of flood areas, and certainly our operational procedures take environmental considerations into account. So, for example, trying not to contaminate watercourses with runoff through incidents. The Constitution, usually they do pick up if there's any change around the Constitution. Virtual meetings have been provided for through legislation anyway, so that's in. And I'm just trying to think, I'm sure I saw something on the Constitution somewhere in here, but I doubt I'm going to be able to find it very quickly. Unless Sarah.
Sarah's long report.
It's quite a lengthy document. But yes, the constitutional documents are normally reported on for robustness.
Here we are.
Yes.
Is that all right, Councillor Brown? Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, we've all been sent out, the constitution documents, but it's things like basically motions. I understand that you can organise motions through emails, and obviously we need to do that at the moment. But I'm not sure whether there's been any formal change in the Constitution. And one of the important things that the Constitution tends to do is on scrutiny, which is probably the next report, it actually often suggests that members can request reports in specific areas, which I think is probably an important scrutiny function. And so really it was that question. And obviously the governance of the organisation is in many senses, the Constitution is an important element within the governance, and I would have expected it to have had its own little box within the governance action plan. But that's just my view on it. Thank you.
Any other questions of any other members? Unless you wanted to come in? Yeah.
Yes, please, Jim. If I press the chat button, does that mean you used to go on a list with the computer? Anyway.
The chat facility is more if someone needs to message us.
Right, that's all right then. I'll get the hang of these knobs.
We've done plenty of chatting this morning.
No. Can I just say, it's a very comprehensive report. I know that we have appointed a sustainability officer, so that goes towards our environmental things, doesn't it? Within our own authority, Monmouthshire, we had a report from the Welsh Audit Office, and the performance that showed in there was a report about the public service boards, saying that really they're not getting as well as they should have been. But the fire service certainly came out with an exemplary performance in Monmouthshire, because not a single meeting had been missed, and I think that's a great credit. Okay, it has alternated possibly with officers, but it doesn't matter. The attendance has been there, and it shows us up particularly well, I thought. So compliments to the officers who have difficult timetables. Can I ask Sarah, I was just rather intrigued, Sarah, there were a couple of paragraphs that were completely reported on one page and then the next page. On page 11 and page 13, it might be that you have to do it. The Welsh Government published for consultation a white paper, following paragraph and following paragraph. And I just wondered if it was necessary to put it in twice.
I'll have a look at that, Councillor Smith. It's bridging the two.
Nice spotting, Val.
Putting together a report like this, it's really comprehensive. There's a whole lot in it, Sarah. It's not a criticism at all. It's just that you can possibly press a button and get something you don't expect. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Chair, if I can just advise, I found one of the references to the constitutional areas, which is page 54 of the agenda, section 4 of the report. It's page 6 of 22 down at the bottom, page 54 in the top left corner, which talks about reviews of the constitutional documents and scrutiny. But obviously the final report on today's agenda looks at revamping scrutiny from the current constraints of finance audit areas.
Okay, thank you. No more questions of anybody. I think that the two ladies this morning worked really, really hard, and more to come. The recommendation of members are requested to consider the content of the draft statement and whether you wish to make any amendments to the document going forward. Are we happy as it's presented, or anybody want to add anything else?
No, just congratulate
everybody happy?
the officers and put it together.
Right. You hear that, Sarah? You got away, and Sal, it's all gone through. Well, thank you for that, everyone. And we move on to item 8 then, a future trends report 2020 update, page 71.
And I think John Carter and Adam Hibbard are going to be taking this item for us.
You're giving the girls a rest, so they got to have a chance to reboot. Look.
Well, I think these, just to be fair to these officers, by way of introduction, they've done some outstanding work on future trends for the service going forward, and certainly some of that work's been updated with some of the more recent data that we have, but I'll leave John and Adam to take you through that. I won't steal any of their thunder.
Excellent.
Morning, members. John Carter here in headquarters. I'll just make a brief introduction, and then I'll pass on to my colleague Adam, who's done an enormous amount of research and work into these reports that you can see. So back in May 2019, members may remember they were presented with research that identified some of the challenges the service was going to potentially face in the future, and potentially opportunities that might come our way as well. Those original reports are attached as Appendices 2 and 3. That's for members to note. The intention when back in May 2019 was to review this information as and when any new information presented itself or other challenges emerged. And then 2020 came along, so we felt it was a time for us to go and look for further research, particularly around the impact of COVID-19 and what it's had on our communities and potentially changes it has had to our way of life and some of the challenges we initially identified back last year. That report is also attached as Appendix 1. And as I mentioned, Adam Hibbard is a stats and risk analyst for the service, has done extensive research into this topic across multiple areas. And hopefully he's with us on the call today and will just give us a run through of Appendix 1 with you. And we'll try to as many questions as you have on the research. Adam, are you with us?
Yeah, I am, John. Good morning, members. I'll just share my screen with you now so you can see the report. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the report in front of you. Yeah. Excellent. So yeah, just picking up on what John was saying there. The purpose of this is to try to identify what research there is out there, what the potential impacts of COVID are on the communities we serve at the moment, and what they could be in the medium to long term. Got to caveat, this report varies heavily with the fact that there's very little